evening from Vietnam. Good morning to you, Helen. Thanks a lot for spending your morning joining our Insight Sharing program and share your stories to our global audience. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, we want to say thank you.
My pleasure. It's a delight to be with you.
And you've been to Cambodia, even it's just on the short trip to go to another country. Cambodia is just nearby my country. So now you have a new friend, your family. The next time if you or your family decide to go to Southeast Asia, make sure you travel to Vietnam and we're going to be here welcoming you.
Sounds great. Don't be surprised if I show up.
Absolutely. So for a little taste of our culture, Helen, it's an honor for our audience to have you to do a little introduction of who you are and the work you are doing. Would you please do that first?
Certainly. So a short introduction, right? I have a long life. I just turned 75, so I'm very pleased to say that I've had a good, healthy, privileged, longer life already. And it's, I think, this awareness that makes me realize that I have a much shorter runway ahead of me than I had behind me. So I have a lot of things to still do before the end comes. But I do know my past was I grew up actually in the United States. The first 17 years of my life I spent outside of New York City, and I went to university in Pennsylvania, and then I went abroad and studied in France and in Spain. And when I finished my university, I went to Germany and lived there for several years. And after that, I came to Canada. And I've lived now in Canada for over 50 years, and I'm married to a Canadian. I have 2 grown children in their 40s, and they live nearby. I'm in rural Ottawa now, so we have about 200 acres, and I live in the forest, and it's a completely different life than in the center of the city. And I've been here I've been married for 47 years, and we're still married, which is an anomaly in today's world. But I spent most of my career and most of my life surrounded by young people. I was an educator, and I started off as a teacher, and then I became a principal of a secondary school. At the time, many women didn't have these jobs, so everything was a struggle. But then I was a principal, and I was also heading up an organization called the Ontario Principals Council, which we began and started in 1998, and I was the president in 2002. And then when I concluded that year, I went to be the head of a girls' school in Ottawa for several years. At the end of that, when I was there, though, I did a lot of innovative work. For instance, I went with the students, they were all girls, to Cusco, and we did the Inca Trail, but we did social service, community service in the city of Cusco. And usually the head of the school wouldn't go, but I would go because I like trekking in the mountains. And then another year we went to Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, and we helped build a rural school at the base of the mountain. And then when we didn't finish it, but when we finished our job there, we climbed Kilimanjaro. And I did that in, I think it was 2006 or 2008. And it was on that trip that I decided, okay, my life's going to change now. And I stopped working for money and started doing not-for-profit work for the next 10 years or so. Well, for the rest of my life so far. I mean, I've been working and doing a number of different things. I worked with Jane Goodall for 10 years. I was also the chair of her board, and did a number of projects and whatnot with her. I did work with the Canadian Executive Services overseas, where I traveled to Bolivia, for instance, and to Honduras, where I would give communication workshops or all sorts of different kinds of workshops in Spanish to the people living there. I went to the Arctic and taught board governance to youth in the Inuit youth in the Arctic. I always tried to combine service, to to the people wherever I traveled, so that I could offset my carbon footprint,
Beautiful.
So I did all of that. And then in my mid-60s, I started losing my confidence, and I felt like I became somewhat invisible. I'm not a quiet person, and I'm extroverted, and I've always had many friends and people, but I just didn't feel the same. After some research and so on, I realized what I was experiencing was ageism. I had internalized ageism, which means self-directed. In other words, because of everything I heard growing up, you're too old to start something new, or, you should be, you can't begin a business at an older age, or I was surrounded by all these anti-aging messages. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. I actually believed that you couldn't learn as much when you got older, or that your memory would fail. I had all these negative impressions about what it meant to grow old. And that stigma really affected me until one day when I was listening to the radio, I heard somebody describe, I thought I was just depressed or it was just me. But then I realized, no, this is something really significant. Ageism is a worldwide, a global epidemic. But people don't recognize it. They don't know that when somebody says to you, Helen, you really look good for your age, I would smile and think that's a compliment. But really, what does that mean? If they said you look good and stopped there, that would be fine. But if they said you look good for your age, the assumption was that, getting older or looking older wouldn't be very favorable. So we have this very negative impression of what it means to grow old. In this culture, it's not that way in other cultures, but in North America. So a former student of mine introduced me at that point to social entrepreneurship and to a center of social innovation in Toronto. She's a good friend, but I mean, she's 50 years younger than me, but it doesn't matter. I've always had friends of different ages. And, I helped, she got a Rhodes Scholarship. I worked with her. She was a student, but became like a friend. And we continue that connection. So she introduced me to social impact investing, and I became fascinated and started taking courses in social entrepreneurship. None of that existed, I have to tell you, when I was a young person, right? Entrepreneurship was, it was just tech, and it was only young people, I thought. So it was new, totally social entrepreneur. And so I took courses, and I decided, okay, in the next chapter of my life, I'm going to try and make a difference in helping the world understand better what it means to age, and try to promote age equity and raise awareness about ageism. Beautiful. And that's what I've been doing.
Beautiful, beautiful. And thanks for doing that, because we read the book 100 Years Old Journey.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I interviewed the authors of the book, and they said that the people will continue to live longer, but we yet ready, we yet prepare physically, mentally, and emotionally for that. So the work that you are doing, you are pioneering to help people to get ready for it. It's very important. And and this conversation is designed to let the people know why you're doing this and the journey taking you to get there. All right. You introduce about yourself in 6 minutes, but it's not enough for our audience. Not fair for us. Okay. So allow me to travel time with you. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
All right. When my wife and I, when we were young, my wife always wanted to become a singer. So all she sang was in the school. That's it, in the class. So not on the performing stage. And I always wanted to become an astronaut, but life
Oh,
didn't give me any chance to do that. Except we are the only Asian, and until this time, interviewing General Charlie Duke. So he is the youngest out of the 12 men ever walked on the moon. So
mm-hmm.
yes, and so we want to bring you all the way to when you were in New York, when you were very small.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was your dream about the future, Helen? The works that Helen gonna do in the future?
Well, when I was very young, I don't think I gave much thought to any of that, frankly. I was
Ah,
a really um, active child. I was very athletic, and so I was very competitive. So I was a really good swimmer and skier and tennis player. Everything I did, I wanted to be the best at it. I was
ah,
very, very competitive. So I don't think I gave any thought at all as a young child to what I wanted to be, other than continue doing what I was doing. I can't remember. It's only later that I think I realized when my parents started sending me abroad to learn French, and they sent me to Switzerland when I was 12 or 13. I realized that what I wanted to do was to travel, and
mm,
I wanted to speak many languages. And so I did pursue that, in that I learned to speak French, German, and Spanish fluently. I
mm.
studied them in high school and university, college, um, and I went abroad in my third year of university to France and to Spain, and I studied there. And then, of course, when I was there, I traveled everywhere in Europe. So you have to imagine. So this is the 1960s now that I'm talking about. Um, and travel wasn't that common. And if you
Mm.
traveled anywhere, it was usually contained, and Europe was very exotic at the time, whereas today, Europe is not so exotic. I mean, going to Asia would be more exotic, or the South Pacific. But I was also of a generation where I didn't have that much choice. I was told I could be a secretary, a teacher, or or a nurse. Those were really the three professions that were open to women. Of course, they did other things, but my father never expected me to do anything, and he tried to encourage me to take education courses, but I refused to do so. I didn't want to be a teacher. So when I
Ah,
think, so when you talk about dreams, so maybe in my high school years, I was thinking I wanted to be able to travel and to work. And the only thing that came to mind was to be an interpreter.
ah,
But honestly, that probably wasn't what I wanted. What I probably was thinking of was I probably wanted to be um, uh, some person a diplomat or something like that. But that wasn't even in my realm of possibility. So I never thought of that. It's only in hindsight now that I realize maybe that's what I really wanted to do, but it never entered my mind. So I didn't even think about it that much. What I did do is I learned languages, because I realized that by traveling, if I wanted to travel, it's much better to speak the language that the people speak, because I can get so much more out of the culture, and I'm not inconveniencing them to have to speak my language. And so that had huge benefits. That really had the greatest influence on my life. The fact that my parents were survivors of the Second World War, of the Holocaust, and they depended very much on being able to speak English or other languages in order to survive. And they
mm.
never trusted anybody or anything after those experiences, but they wanted for their children to be able to have options too. So they encouraged my brother and I to learn languages, which I
Wow.
did. So that's
Yeah.
the reason why. And then, so I really wanted to travel. That was very interesting, because I like to learn about other cultures and so on. But I met some Germans. So you have to understand that I never met a German before, and I never saw a program on television that had anything to do with Germany, because it was always about the Nazis and about the, and my parents turned off the television. They didn't want us they didn't want us exposed to it because they had been so touched by it. And if you think, I was born 3 or 4 years after the war ended, you know, that's all. So it was still very close. So in the 50s, you know, whenever you saw a picture with a German in it, it was a Nazi or so. So my imagination of whatever Germany was terrible. It was probably not realistic. But when I was at college, I met a German, and he was wonderful. He was a lovely person, and we played tennis together, and we played squash together, and he'd drive me back home to New York. And as a result, I met many Germans, and I decided, much to my parents' disapproval, that I wanted to go to Germany when I finished. So I went to Germany. The only thing I could do to sustain myself was to teach English, which was the last thing I wanted to do, but I had to do something. So that's how I got into education, was by default, not by design.
Wow. So what did your parents say when you went to Germany and stayed there for a couple of years?
They weren't pleased at the start, but they knew that they had met many of my German friends, and they were very very understanding, and they were very liberal in their thinking. Fortunately, they never said to me, "You're forbidden to see that German or do anything or go away or whatever." They never said that. And after 2 years of being there, they actually came to visit me, and they had never ever been in Germany in their whole lives. At that point, they were in their 40s or 50s or so, early 50s. And they came to Germany to visit me and to be with my friends. And they had a very favorable impression of how things had changed. So
that is wisdom right there. What did they decide to go to Germany and visit the country?
Well, they only to see me. It's like you going to visit your children in Seattle. They had no interest in Germany. They just wanted to see me. So, so they went. Yeah. So they came to visit. Yeah.
Even though there's a lot of courage that they put out, you know, given the background, everything, you know, there's a lot of love right there, Helen, and that's why, no doubt, that why you and your children and your grandchildren is very close to one another, right?
Yeah. Yeah, family is everything, was everything. So I wasn't, so that's how I got into teaching. And then when I was in Germany, after a few years, I met somebody who encouraged me to come to Canada. And so I came to Canada, and I couldn't stay here. I had to study because I couldn't get a permit to be a resident or anything. So I studied in French to become a teacher, because I'm in Ottawa, which is a bilingual city, and the only faculty of education was, at the time, for secondary school, was in French. So I knew French. I didn't know French Canadian. It was a very different language, but I took the courses in French, and I became a teacher. I have no regrets, even though I thought I wouldn't want to be a teacher. I became one.
Because that was the question that I would ask, you know, why did you decide to go to Canada? So I'll have to change the question a little bit, okay? So, because you travel the world, you travel so many places. So why Canada for that many years?
You mean now? Well, I ended up marrying a Canadian, that's why.
That's a simple answer like that, right?
Yeah, simple, very simple. I was in Canada for a few years, and I met him, and I had a job here, so I stayed here. And at the time, the relationship between the United States and Canada was good. Although I came at a time when a lot of Americans came to Canada to avoid the Vietnam War in the early 70s. So you know, I just stayed. I mean, it was a good place to be. I had a good job. I had many friends. And it wasn't too far from where my parents were in New York. So I could get on a plane, and I had to get on 2 or 3 planes at that time, but I could get home, and I visited very often, and they came here.
Yeah. So as a teacher, and then you grow up your career there, went to many places, do many beautiful projects at the same time, can travel and exercise, right? So so what happened at the years 60 when I noted in here that you starting to question about yourself, question about life and things like that? For a person that very active like you, have a lot of network, have a lot of energies like you. So
Mm-hmm.
where did that thought come from into your
I,
life?
I don't know. I don't think it's so much a thought as the realization that once I was always a leader in my respective roles, right? As a head of a school and a principal and president of a big council responsible for 5,000 principals. People always wanted to talk to me and have conversations and so on. But when you lose your title, especially in North America, and
Mm,
you don't have any business card anymore, your identity very often is is lost,
yeah.
or you feel as if you're. And I was always such a hard worker that I hadn't developed a whole lot of hobbies. I mean, I did a lot of exercise and sports and read and movies and had lots of friends, but it wasn't the same. And I'd go to a party or something and nobody really wanted to talk to you anymore. It was because we have such a stupid mentality, if I can say here, that everything is attached to money and name and brand and so on. So that's
Mm,
what I think. That's what the origin of that feeling was, that yeah, people don't question or get involved or inquire or aren't as curious anymore. And then you start to feel invisible, especially as a woman, not so much as a man.
mm,
And when you get older, it's a known fact that women, there's lots of discrimination against women as they get older in North America. They lose their jobs, they dye their hair so they look younger, they put on all these creams and everything so that they look younger, because this society has been youth centric for a really long time, really since, after World War II. Everything is focused on young people.
mm.
You should look young, be young, try to be young, do everything you can to remain youthful. And I started to realize that that was affecting me. So
Oh,
that was where the interest came in, and the understanding of what ageism did to individuals, to communities, and to society and economies in particular, is that people begin to change their thinking about what the value is of an older person. That's not
mm.
true in Vietnam, I know, and not in a lot of other Asian countries, but it certainly is true here. It will change, and that's also part of the reason why, um, as boomers, as boomers, and I would be of that generation, and I don't like referring to people as a generation or anything. Um, we were the ones that was changing the world, and then suddenly we became old. So we're the ones, besides Zuckerberg, who said, anybody over 30 is old and they're not as smart enough anymore, or this, that, and the other thing. Um, we were the ones responsible for those feelings, because we were the ones who were championing, capitalism and, you know, we weren't as individualistic, but we were, we weren't as generative as I think the generation is now,
Yeah.
where we want to give back. But at the time, we were absorbed with ourselves, and we were the bulk of the population, right? If you
Yeah.
look at a population pyramid, it was huge at the bottom and very small at the top.
Yeah.
Now it's the exact other way. It's like a column going up, and the fastest growing group of people is 85 and older now. So, everything has changed, but ageism has permeated society to such an extent that in the United States alone, it's a $64 billion industry for cosmetics and skincare for for 1 year alone.
I want to bring you to the moment of uncomfortable because you in that moment you realize something important, a mission, something that you need to do, right?
Can you excuse me 1 second?
Yes, don't worry.
I'm on a Zoom call. Can I call you back? Sorry.
Yeah. So no worry. So let me start it again, okay? So I want to bring you to the moment that you got uncomfortable, okay? And because a lot of people, a lot of time, will go into that uncomfortable stage, but they stay in that stage.
They're
not getting out. You got out of that, and you're starting something new, not only to help you to change, but also create a movement to help the people to age well, right? So the people deserve to know how you feel when you were in that moment every day. What was in your head? How did you feel? How uncomfortable you were?
Well, I was always busy doing a number of different things, but to tell you the truth, what frustrated me the most was, and I described to you a lot of the not-for-profit work that I did, traveling and so on, but I was always part of a project, but I never saw the end of it. I found that frustrating. And so I had to reflect. I did a lot of reflection, but it wasn't necessarily conscious reflection. It was sort of subconscious. But I realized at one point, you know, Helen, you're in your mid-60s. You still have a lot of energy and drive. You can do more than what you're doing now, you know, and that was the thinking. But you know, I think I'm lucky too, because my health was good and is pretty good, you know, and I have energy and, you know, enthusiasm, and I enjoy being with people. But I realized, you know, I started learning and realizing that for me to age happily, let's put it that way, I need to have purpose. And that's, so I realized, you know, older people lose their dignity because people don't value their contributions. But if they encouraged more of their contributions and encouraged them to do more and not just cut them off at this random age of 65, because that's when you can, you know, legitimately perhaps retire, you know, it just frustrated me. So I started doing research on longevity and on all sorts of courses. And because I'm an educator, what came naturally to me was to try and help other people transition from one stage to another, which is what I did. I had courses on purpose, on transition, on, you know, what are the characteristics of longer lived, happy individuals. And so I started developing these courses and offering them online. Again, a lot of it was during COVID, so I did a lot of it online. But before COVID, I did it in bars. In the evening, I'd offer courses. I was focused very much on the entrepreneurial mindset. That doesn't mean that you have to become an entrepreneur, but there are certain competencies that you need that are good for everybody at any age.
Yeah.
But there are certain things like spotting opportunity or taking initiative. So for instance, I would give sessions on spotting opportunity. What do I mean by that? I would mean, okay, you shop every day at the store on the corner there. Today, you're going to make a point of going across town and shopping at another store. Notice the differences. Notices where, you know, what's new, what's different. Where are the opportunities? Talk to people on the corner. Speak to the cashier. Talk to the person in produce. And think differently. Try to get out of the box. You know, those are the kind of things that are really important. But most people don't do it. If you go to work every day a certain route, take another route. What do you notice on the corner of that street? maybe something will give you an idea of something that you want to pursue. Maybe you see a beautiful mural on a wall and you think, oh, I could do that. Or I could make a painting, or I could start, you need to think outside the box. So, I would do a lot of different exercises. I developed courses on the entrepreneurial mindset, and I offered it to those people who were willing and interested. So that's how I started. But the initial, and the reason I named my business Top 60 Over 60 is because of what I still want to do, but I got sidetracked. And that was to have events, or one event, let's say in my city, just to make it simple, in Ottawa, that we would have nominations for people who are older, who are making meaningful contributions to their communities, to their places of faith, or to their, ethnic groups. It wouldn't matter what, but who were over the age of 60, so that you could raise the profile with young people who could start to think favorably about growing older and not fear it the way I did, for instance. So I wanted to highlight the extraordinary, ordinary individual. And that's what I will try to do now in the near future, is try and find some sponsors or something, because I think that's what we need in society. We need role models. Yeah. And we don't need role models of men and women who make millions of dollars, because that's not possible for everybody. But every individual can contribute meaningfully to his or her world, wherever it is. Whether it's bringing in cats and dogs from the neighborhood and, helping them survive, or, talking to children in schools. I really believe in the need for intergenerational connections. Beautiful. So that people don't have conversations and they can bridge those gaps.
Beautiful.
So I held conversations over Zoom among different generations, and they worked wonderfully well. And what I found out was that young people love talking to older people, but they don't know how to get started, and they don't know, they're intimidated. They think, oh God, they're too young, nobody's going to be interested in me. But that's not the case at all. So,
you are a very determined person, with a driven person with purpose. So I'm sure that whatever you set on the horizon, you will accomplish that. I note in here in this notebook is the word purpose. It's important. And it's important because a lot of us living every day at different age, in their lives, don't have purpose at all. So you when you at the 60s, you redefine your purpose again and redefine your new values. So I would like to pick the wisdom in there, because at 60 years old, you redefine what purpose for Helen, and what value is going to be different totally from 40, different totally from the 20s. So this is the first time I asked this question. So at that time, what was the process for you to redefine your purpose?
Well, it happened, organically in a way. I started investigating. I started doing things. I told you I met a student who introduced me to social entrepreneurship. And my natural inclination was just to go back to education and schools and do something in that area, which I could have done. But I felt like I've done that. And really, essentially, what I'm doing now is I'm just extending that. Instead of, I was always focused on maximizing the potential of my students and my staff. Now I'm just looking at maximizing the potential of people as they age. So it's really, it's not such a big difference. The purpose perhaps when I was younger was to survive. So I had to work and I had to do something, and I chose something that I loved doing. I loved being in education. And then I've always loved what I've done. And I've always had the luxury of not having to work longer than I wanted, simply because I worked and had a pension. Not everybody's as privileged as that, So with a pension, I could afford to do things differently too. I didn't have to be 65 and looking for work in a supermarket because nobody would hire me to do anything else, you know.
Yeah.
So, so, um, so so it evolved into, you know, this new kind of movement, and I started getting networked on LinkedIn and talking to people, just like you're doing, talking to people. I mean, I know people from all over the world, and now that COVID's over, I'm starting to meet them. But it's been an incredible journey. It's so enriching, and it has given me, you know, it's educated me to help others realize that the first and most important thing is you really need to be connected socially. It doesn't
Mm.
have to just be family. It can be friends, but you need to be with social connections. That's when the first things that goes, and loneliness and isolation is the most dangerous thing and shortens your life by several years.
Yeah. And
So,
it's scary for me when you say that the young generation looked at the generations older than them and think that, you know, they are less of the values, or to, you know, so many different assumptions right there that prohibiting the connections, right?
yeah.
And
Mhm.
they're forgetting the fundamental thing is one day they get to that stage
That's
also
right.
themselves,
Yeah.
right? And then now they push them, you know, they physically and mentally put themselves away into that edge. So instead of, you know, connecting into the next generations to understand, you know, the wisdom, learning from their life experience, how beautiful it is, right? So what could we do to
Well,
help?
I think, yeah, I think there's a lot we can do, actually, really a lot. And I think you're in a great position to do that. And I'd like to talk to you some more about some things that we could maybe do together. But I really think
Please.
that first of all, the research is very clear. Children who have a connection with their grandparents, for instance, are much less ageist than those who don't. So there are many studies that have shown that children as young as 3 already have very uh, negative beliefs about what it means to grow old. You know, again, I'm talking about my society. I don't think that's true in many Asian cultures. It's the contrary. You do revere your elders, you take care of them. We have something that's called age siloing. You know, you put people away in a retirement home when they get old because you can't take care of them anymore. I mean, to me, that's shameful. But I understand that it may be necessary if somebody needs certain kind of care. However, you know, my Indian friends said they'd be embarrassed to tell a friend that they put their mother in an old age home because they couldn't
Mm.
take care of her, you know. So, you know, we really have to change that notion of fearing growing older and looking forward to growing older. And we can only do that if we can show younger generations that, in fact, there's a lot that one does throughout life, not only at the beginning of life.
Mm.
But children absorb the messages of their parents, you know, the parents who will say, oh, you know, watch out, don't run into that old man, he might fall over. You know, just by
Mm.
saying that to a child, they think, oh, old, be careful. You know, they're vulnerable, they're frail,
Mm.
you know, or, you know, anything about, you know, they're dependent, or that's the common notion. If you look at street signs in this country or in the United States, you'll see pictures on yield signs with an old man and an old lady with a cane walking across the street to say you're in an area where there are maybe a retirement home. Or all of those impressions are very, very, very significant. They show old people every time as weak and
Mm.
vulnerable. So we have to become more aware of these kinds of images and the stories that we tell children, you know.
Oh my
So,
God.
you know,
Mm.
so children really need to be educated at a very young age, and they aren't, about age. And the other thing is that your children and my grandchildren are going to live 30 years longer probably than I have a chance to live. The average life expectancy for a child born today is 100. That's an average. So they're going to live to 120. There is no pressure. There should be not so much pressure to do everything at the beginning of your life. You know, work, have a family, enjoy the family, have enough money to be with your family, take a sabbatical, go back to school, learn something new, start a new career. All of these things are going to be the new norms moving forward. But today, we still think with a 20th century mindset, learn, earn, retire. And that's not realistic anymore. Retire, you could be alive as long as you were working for another 40 years. And what are you going to do? Nothing? Sit around? It's crazy. You need to keep working. And we have to change policies and procedures in governments and in jobs to enable people to continue to work and to contribute. But right now, it's very difficult. We can't get insurance. You can't get there are a lot of things that need to change. But all of that is starting to happen very slowly. And yet people still adhere to, the old belief that, in your 60s, your time of working is up. But you have the opportunity of doing what I think you are doing. You're taking time. You're going to live in New Zealand for a few months. And then you'll come back and you'll evaluate, what did I think of that? Or do I want to do something different? And that is a privilege to be able to do it. I'm not so naive to think that everybody can do that, right? There are too many poor people in the world who have to work all the time. But for those of us who are fortunate enough to be able to reflect on these things and have the time later in life to enjoy, that's not enough. And if we don't think positively about the future, if we don't have social connection, if we don't have purpose, our lives are going to be shorter.
Yeah.
And less healthy. And there's so much research to prove that.
Yeah. And I'm worried because if we're not prepared, we're not going to get there. Right? It's just like a marathon. Yeah, if you're not exercise, you're not prepared for 1 mile running, then 3 miles running, you're not gonna finish a full marathon, right?
No.
And every day that if everything that we do, little thing today, will matters a lot. 10 years on the road, 20 years on the road, people don't have that patience to wait to see, because again, we want to see immediate results. We exercise so that the summer we can wear the bikinis to go to the beach, but not knowing that we need to exercise so that 12 years from now, 20 years from now, we still be able to swim in on the beach and the ocean, right? Yeah. So Helen, how could we help the people to prepare for that so that they get to...
It's a mindset. I refer to it as a longevity mindset.
Okay.
A longevity mindset means that you are thinking that and knowing that your life is going to be longer than what your parents or grandparents were, and therefore you need to be prepared to understand that is the new normal. So you've got to think and prepare, as you say. You have to eat well. You have to stay strong by exercising. And by exercising, I don't just mean walking or cardiovascular. You need strength exercise. And that's the one thing that they've shown can make a difference at any age. You can start at 70 and start working out. You don't have to run marathons, but you can take some heavy weights and you can do some exercises 2 times a week, 3 times a week. You will improve your strength. And that's what you need as you get older, is you need to keep those muscles in shape so that they can keep your body upright, so that you can pick up the groceries, so that you can help a grandchild get up when they fall down. You need your strength. So you need to eat well. You need to exercise. You need to stay socially connected. You have to continue to learn and grow mentally. And you need to find purpose. It can be a big P, where it's for a greater cause, or it can be a little p, which could be that you're taking care of your grandchildren while your children work, or you have a dog that you need to walk and feed every day. That's a purpose too. That's something that may not be the most grandiose expectation, but it is a purpose. But
Beautiful.
you need to have purpose, and it doesn't have to be a grandiose design. What I'm doing is really ambitious. I recognize that, but as you said, I'm driven,
Mm-hmm.
and not everybody is, but I want to make a difference in a significant way, and I have started to see that by the comments I'm getting, when I speak, or people come up to me and say, I had no idea that my brain. So I do a lot of brain research and talk about the brain, and your brain peaks at age 30. But that doesn't mean the learning and that you can't continue to grow. There are different types of intelligence. It's called crystallized as you get older. When you're younger, it's fluid. We need both of those in the world. And that's why the workforce should be multi-generational, because we have different, operating systems in our head as we change. And we can continue to learn forever. There's no expiry date on productivity or on creativity. In fact, you get more creative as you get older.
Yeah. Imagine the world, how beautiful it is, how creative it could be if different people, different background, different age, right? Coming together and share ideas. How beautiful we can, we can make human flourishing. How beautiful we can create something, right?
Yeah, that's my dream.
Yeah. I have two last questions for this conversation today. All right.
Sure.
And I note a lot in my note in here that you mentioned the word think a lot.
Yeah, reflect. Yeah.
Yes, think. Because my wife and I, we've been on the quest to help people to improve their ability to think. We have a fundamental belief that our thinking capability these days has been diminishing because too many noises, too many problems out there that are affecting our ability to think. So every chance we be able to talk to amazing people who are great thinkers, we ask this question, and hopefully whoever picks up the answer will be able to find something informative for them to reflect, to think, to learn, and to apply. And that is where their transformation process will begin. Right? So the question for you, Helen, is how have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
Well, I expose myself deliberately to new situations. So I have a belief that, and I've operated this way, that I need to get out of my comfort zone at least once a year. So one of the things that, so I always try to do that in different ways. Sometimes it's to go on a canoe camping trip and to be out in the wilds and sleep on the floor, which I hate, but I'll do it because it brings me into a new awareness about how lucky I am to have a bed, or to listen to the sounds in the forest and to relish what that is. Now, I live in nature. I live out in the country, so I have bears and foxes and deer and everything that I'm exposed to a lot. But some people aren't, and I walk every day with my dog in the woods, and I notice things that are different. But I mean, really get out of your comfort zone. So that's part of the reason that I went to Nepal, for instance, was to climb in the Himalayas, to be exposed to a different culture, to sleep in tea houses, and to use toilets that were totally different than the ones that I knew. I mean, all of those things have given me the ability to be, I think, somewhat resilient, which is what you need as you grow older, and to experience new ideas, new places, new cultures, new languages, and to just expose myself to that. I think that's critical for everybody. And that's why I say, you know, I always talk about spotting opportunity. You know, expose yourself to, you don't have to go to Nepal. You can go down the street, talk to the person who's the drug addict, ask them about their life, you know, find out why, what happened to them, what kind of trauma perhaps precipitated them being here, and show empathy and kindness, you know. That's the one thing we can all do. We need no money to be kind.
Yeah.
To smile at a stranger, to laugh, you know. Do that more often. See what that makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Those are the little things that contribute to your well-being without, and to others too, but you don't realize how important it is to you.
Beautiful. I met my my ex-colleagues, a group of, you know, like very talents from a deco world that I used to let and grow them from the manager level and up. And so they did a small coffee celebration, and they told me this one little story, but I didn't pay attention to. They said that when I was the leader, the one thing consistently that I taught them was to say hello and say thank you to the taxi driver. And that's it, because nobody cares about a taxi driver. You know, they have so many people on the daily basics, right? So if we can be something different. And now they have children already. They teach their children to do that, you know. And they say, years ago they didn't like me. Every time they say, okay, hey, why didn't you say hello to them? What, you know, what happened that you sat right there with him and you're not saying anything? And then they say, oh, 12 years on the road. Now they're teaching their children to do that. See, there's no money, no cost to kindness. That's for sure. No. Okay. So.
I don't know. Did I answer your question? I don't even remember what it was.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, go out of comfort zone, try something new, and you don't need to try something new. It's big, huge. Try little, small, little things in your capacity, right? Yeah, and I believe that
if you just go down the road and you smile at people, sometimes now because of all the technology and people don't make eye contact, sometimes they get nervous because you're friendly. It's very interesting. Sad.
Sad, yeah. But I believe that humans, we are in nature, we want to be connecting to one another. So it might be not working for this time being, but in the future, in the short, you know, they will see the shortcoming, they will, you know, they will change. It's something better. All right. Yeah. The last question, Helen, we traveled the past. We understand you was an athletic person. You went to your mother was so clever to put on the ad to send you to Switzerland at 12 years old for you to learn French, right? And you had the courage to travel to many different countries and stay there. And now you had the courage to change the notion of having people to be aging better, aging healthier, and have the purpose in their life. That's very beautiful, because we are going to see the life expectancy for people getting longer. So if we're not equipped now, by then we're not ready for sure, right? And it's even more devastating if we're not ready by then. So it's better off to have, you know, something to do now. And thanks for leading the change, for pioneering that. Okay, the last question is about the future, Helen. So it's not fair we don't talk about future. Okay, travel too much of the past already. So is there anything exciting you are working on in the coming months, in the near future, that exciting you want to share it with me and the audience, so we can celebrate with Helen in advance?
Well, I've been writing a book. But it's not finished yet. It's finished. It's edit. I need to edit it, and I'm writing it with somebody, so it's more complicated. So there's that. The other thing, as I said, I would really like to get a top 60 over 60 program started, so that it could be continued in different places, and people could begin to see the value that so many older adults provide for society, not just for. The other reality is our economies are going to depend on older adults becoming part of the economy or staying in the economy, because because populations are declining so quickly, we don't have enough people to replace us. So we need to understand that we need to continue to work and contribute, but it doesn't have to be the same way. It doesn't have to be 5 days a week from 9 to 5. It could be twice a week this week and 3 times a week next week, or half days, or, I mean, there's got to be more flexibility, especially for older people and younger people. You need more flexibility. Yeah. And the world, and that's what we have in common, really in common, a young person raising a family and an older person taking care of their elders. We all need flexibility. So things, you know, so I look forward to those changes. I see them starting to happen, but not nearly enough yet. You know, we're still stuck in our old ways. So remote work is great in some cases. I think we miss out a lot on being solely remote because you don't get to meet people. And how are you going to meet people and get married and have children if you never see anybody? But
having children, you know, online.
Yeah, having children online. I don't think that works yet. That's next. Yeah. But so those are the things I would like to celebrate with you in the future, is getting some, you know, even something like a deck. I would love to find a sponsor who understands, because they need to understand that older adults are of value. They're a strategic imperative to businesses. So you need to continue to train them. You need to continue to help them become what you need. And the only reason they aren't is simply because, you know, at age 55, you say, oh, he's not going to be around for in 5 years. I'm not going to train him. Well, that's wrong. Train him. They want the professional development. They don't necessarily want to leave. They love what they do. And many people's social world revolves around their work now. You know, it's not just, you know, outside of work. It's your work colleagues that are your friends.
So Rome it's not built overnight, right? So yeah, so I hope that on the journey that you are doing, you will have a lot more people joining to make that journey more meaningful, more beautiful, and more exciting, more energy for you. And you are, like I said earlier, you are a determined person, very driven. You will make it happen. And on that day, you let us know. So we're gonna give you a bit of applause from this part of the world, okay?
Well, you can help me. That's all I can
Absolutely.
say.
Let me know what I could do. I would love to do. Sure. Okay, Helen. Such a pleasure to know you, and like I said earlier, it's feel like I've been knowing you for a long time already. So this conversation is easily to get and get connected with you. You make me feel really comfortable to have a conversation, and thanks for providing that pleasant moment together. Yeah,
it goes both ways. Yeah.
You have a wonderful day. Tell your family I say hello and give them a big kiss and big hugs from Asia, okay?
Okay, I'll do that. Sure. Thank you. And same to you, although you only have one at home, right?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hope to hear from you again. Bye.
Bye-bye.